Introducing Zach Davis and Josh Anderson with the SoundMoney Podcast.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the SoundMoney Sound Principles, the Believers Podcast. My name is Josh Anderson. Glad to be with you today here with Zach Davis. How are you today, Zach?
Good, Josh. How's it going?
Man, it is awesome. It's a beautiful time of the year in Southeast Idaho, and it's awesome to be with our listeners today and to share some pretty fun, unique topics. We're going to start today a 3-part series. So make sure you watch part 1, part 2, part 3 to understand what we're really trying to get across here. This is something for us that is fundamental. We get asked this question all the time, Zach, about is it important for me to set personal life goals? We get asked that question all the time, right? So, Zach, what in that, give us kind of a couple of examples of what we're talking about around personal life goals, not like business goals or not making money goals, but personal life goals. What are we kind of talking about there?
Well, I think you're spot on. I think it's an important topic because most people get so wrapped up in business goals that that's all they can really think about, right? And they don't think about the other parts of their life. And so, I mean, you can set goals around relationships, right? The people that you're around, your kids, your spouse, or other types of things, recreation. I mean, years ago, I set a goal. This has probably been 15 years ago, probably. I set a goal. I had an old set of golf clubs, right? We love to play golf. I had an old set of golf clubs and I wanted a new set of clubs, but I'm like, hey, I'm going to give myself some motivation to do this. So I went, okay, if I can get to a single digit handicap, I will go get myself fit for a brand new set of clubs, right? So that was something that I worked towards and a goal that I set that had nothing to do with business, had everything to do with just my recreation and my hobbies or whatever, but it kept me driving for something, right? And something to work for.
And it would have been easy. Like, it wasn't a matter of you could have bought any set of golf clubs you want in the world, right?
Yeah.
Not a financial thing. It's am I disciplined enough to put in the work to study and to work on this sport, golf, enough to make that a reality. But the goal at the end, the reward, I should say, at the end was the new set of clubs. So we're going to talk a little bit about this, and we're going to get a little personal for a minute, right? We're going to share with you a little bit about some of our personal goals. It's luckily for Zach and I in business and in personal life, a lot of our things align. So we're going to share with you kind of some personal experiences over the next 2.5, 3 episodes here that are pretty special to us, but they're the things that drive us. And I think in your personal life, you got to have goals and you got to set goals that drive you as an entrepreneur to get there. And a lot of times these goals that we're going to talk about, these personal life goals, are things that they take effort, they take discipline, they take hard work, and a lot of times they take making the money in your business to make them a reality. Okay. And so, I'm going to get into that in a second, Zach. And before I start on this, I'm going to ask Zach a few questions. He doesn't know I'm going to ask these, but I'm curious. I need for some backstory. Zach, have you ever watched me, since you've known me, have you ever watched me jog? Why are you laughing?
No, actually, I've never seen you jog. No,
and you're laughing because I grew up playing lots of sports, right? I love athletics. Have you ever seen me? Would you dare say that? Do I walk pretty good? Am I a good walker?
You're more of a waddler.
Oh, more of a waddler. Oh my goodness. That's a fat joke deep down. That's a fat joke.
You shuffle?
I shuffle. Okay, I shuffle. So when Zach and I really became business partners, at the time in life that Zach and I became business partners, I had already been in some pretty significant accidents. Automobile accident, head-on car collision, and a pretty good motorcycle crash before that made it so I couldn't jog if I wanted. I can't run. I can jog for maybe 50 yards. Okay. And walking is not that easy, right? Like, I look like a moron when I walk, absolutely every day. And I share that for context in a minute. I'm going to share a...
Hold on. We'll put it this way.
Go.
So Josh and I do a ton together, right? Well, I mean, even outside of business, I mean, he's like one of my best friends, and we do a lot together. We love to hunt and fish and be outdoors. You can't lose Josh. If you're in the mountains, you know where he is because everybody else walks like this. Like, so you see their footprints and they're like, next to each other like this. Josh is like this. So, when you can track Josh,
you can track
out.
me. Yeah, you can find me. Okay, my legs don't work anymore, and so you can find me. Okay, so that's context about what we're going to share today. So, I'm going to share my screen for a minute, Zach. Let's see here if I can do this. All right, you seeing that, Zach?
Yep.
So this is an image, right? I'm going to tell you a little backstory about this. This is an image that I took when I went back into the building. I took this picture, but this is an image for me that represents when I was a 12-year-old boy. Okay. When I was a 12-year-old boy, I was in hunter safety. If you live out here in the West, and if you're just listening, right, and you can't see the imagery on YouTube or YouTube Music, then, hey, you might not get as much out of today's episode. I'll do my best to explain. But what this image is 4 sheep that are in the Idaho Fish and Game's office, okay? When I was a 12-year-old boy, the first time I ever saw a sheep was at Hunter's Education. Back then, you had to go to Hunter's Ed for a little while, and you had to go spend 2 weeks of class to become a hunter in the state of Idaho. And as a 12-year-old boy, I saw this up on the wall. It's called the Grand Slam of Sheep. And on the far left there is a Dall sheep. And it was the first time I ever saw one of these majestic, beautiful, all white as snow animals. And I remember telling my instructor, I said, man, one day I'm going to go hunt those Dall sheep. And this man who had been jaded by the world, right, who had been beat up by the world, he snickered and said, people from Idaho don't get a chance to go do that. And I thought, wow, but I want to go hunt them, right? And as time went on, I realized that in our valley and where we live, maybe a handful of men had ever hunted that animal, ever. One of which was my uncle. And when I was in my early 20s, he went and hunted them. And the tales that he came back and told were magnificent. Now, Zach, I'm going to pick on you for a sec. At the same time, when was the first time you ever thought about wanting to hunt one of these majestic animals, a Dall sheep? Real fast.
It was actually pretty close to the same age. I was somewhere in there, 10, 11, 12, 13. I don't remember the exact years, but I remember there was a show on television. And it would come on, I think it was every Saturday. And I loved wildlife. I loved being outdoors. I loved animals. And so I would watch this show, and it was called Wild America by Marty Stauffer.
Oh, yeah, Marty Stauffer, Wild America. Every Saturday morning, Zach.
Yeah, so it's Saturday morning. So I'd get on there and I'd watch that show, right? And I still remember, until next time, enjoy our Wild America. Marty Stauffer, right? But I remember one episode that he did, and it was up in the Alaskan range, and they were up with a film crew, and I think they went up to near Denali, and they were filming all of these Dall sheep. And that was the first time I'd seen one. I'm like, this is like crazy. These are beautiful animals. And so that was the first time I'd really seen them. And that was when it kind of started festering in my mind, right? That, man, I would love to go harvest one of those sheep.
See, and I remember, in 20, so the beautiful thing about having like-minded business partners, right, or people in your sphere of influence who are like-minded, Zach and I were sitting around in 2018. 2018, we're in the truck and we're driving, and Zach said, you know what? We're not getting any younger. You remember this? We're not getting any younger. We need to go hunt Dall sheep. And so we set a goal to do it before Zach turned 40, right? Yep. And by the way, he still looks like he's 12, but he's going to go fat jokes. I'm going to go age jokes. So we decided 2018 we're going to go, and we try and book a hunt. And Zach, were we able to even? How difficult is it for somebody to go hunt these animals? We said in 2018 we're going. How easy was it for us to get there?
Dude, it was insane. Not only the price tag I was like, holy cow.
Okay. Yes.
But the availability, it was very difficult. There's very few tags, and you have to go with a licensed outfitter and be guided. And there was no availability. That year we're like, we're going, right? We're going this year. No, it was like 2 years out that we had to book that thing.
Yeah, we booked it 2018 to go in 2020. And anybody remember what happened in 2020? I just stuck up on the screen. Here it is, August 2020, and there I am, right at the Idaho Falls Airport, getting ready to leave. And you remember that stupid time we had to wear masks? This is August of 2020. Okay, look in the background. Like, I'm the only dude in the whole airport, in the Idaho Falls Airport. I took this picture because it was like a ghost town, right? And I'm just going to share with the listeners, Zach, the craziness, right? I thought I had my journal with me here, but I don't. It's in my dresser at home. I thought it was here at my desk. But I wrote in my journal that day, sitting in the Idaho Falls Airport, that this was a 35-year dream of mine, right? And here I sit in the Idaho Falls Airport with the opportunity to go fulfill a 35-year-old dream that very few people in the world get to do. And in that moment, the lead up to it, I was supposed to go there, Zach. If you remember, we were both supposed to fly up together on August 25th, right?
Yeah.
That's when we were supposed to kind of go up there. August 21st, we were supposed to fly up there. And you and I prepared months and months in advance. We got all the gear together, got all the stuff, and had it all laid out, all of our food laid out. We're going to live in our backpacks for up to 10, 11 days. We're going to live out of a 70-pound backpack, right? Tell the listeners what happened on the 10th of August. What phone call did you get?
Yeah. So, talking about managing relationships. So we're gearing up for this hunt, right? Super excited. Like Josh said, we got all the stuff ready. We're ready to go. And we've already waited like 1.5 2 years for this. And it's like the equivalent of, some people don't even understand this, Josh, but it's the equivalent of Christmas as a kid. Like, you've waited for this since you were like 12 years old, and now you've booked it. Wait this time. So I had promised my wife that I would. There's this bicycle trail that you can take. That's an old railroad route up towards Missoula, or north of Missoula, Montana, up in northern Idaho. And I promised her that I would take her and the kids, and we would go up and we'd do this 16-mile bike ride, right? Which I love to ride a bike.
Yeah, right.
But she had been looking forward to this all summer, and I had planned it like perfectly. I know I got to leave on, this date. We're going to go up, we're going to do this, and we're going over glacier and do the thing with the family. And I'm on my way up to Missoula. I was a Saturday night. I was headed up on a Sunday morning, and I get a phone call from the outfitter. He's like, "Hey, there's a guy."
By the way, at 11:30 at night.
Yeah, it was late. He calls, like, "Hey, one of the hunters before you fell in the river, hurt his knee, got scared. He wants out. He's done. Can you come in tomorrow?" I'm like, no, I want to. But I told my wife that I saw my wife, and she's like, "Look, you've been waiting forever for this. Let's turn around. We'll go back home. We'll do this trip another time. You can fly out in the morning." I'm like, I can't do that. So I called Josh. I'm like, "Hey, he's got a guy that's left. He can take us one of us a week early. Do you want to go?" And so, like, with 8-9 hours notice,
8-9 hours,
you had to get all your stuff all put together and fly out.
So with Zach's gone, we're supposed to go together. We planned on going together for 2 years, but now this has happened, right? And with 8 hours notice, I pack all my gear, and 8 hours notice, I'm at the airport. Okay. I've changed my flights. It's COVID year. There's nobody at the airports, and there I am, right? Like 8 hours notice. And with that, it's been a whirlwind. I get the call at 11:30 at night. Here I sit at 7 in the morning at the airport, flying to Anchorage, Alaska. And when I land, I literally land, Zach. I get off the airplane. They drive me across the airfield to a little hangar. And here we are stuffing the stuff in the Super Cub, right? Like, everything that I'm going to use, everything on the ground there is what I'm going to live out of for the next 10 days, right? Like, we stuff it in the Super Cub. And this is now about 16 hours after I got the phone call. Okay. Like, whole life changes 16 hours. And then here we are, like, stuffing everything in this little Super Cub, and you're going to go on the adventure of a lifetime. and you jump in the super club, and now you're out flying out to the bush. We got to fly about 2 hours out into the bush. And this is just kind of give you an idea, right? Like if you're watching, this kind of give you an idea of what the country looks like, right? You fly between all these massive mountains, and there is no vegetation up on the top of these mountains, like where the sheep will actually live, Zach. It's just rocks, right? Vertical rocks. And as someone who can't jog, can't run, and walks really funny, at this moment, like as we're flying out there, I'm starting to realize, oh my goodness, I've spent my whole life hunting. I've spent my whole life hiking in the mountains. I spent the last 15 years doing it with a pretty good amount of pain every day to do that. But at that moment, when you're looking out the wing of the plane, it starts to become really real how massive this country is. Zach, what was like your first impression when you saw that country? Were you prepared? You feel like you were ready?
Yeah, I had trained and worked out for a year to get ready for this thing, right? And yeah, when I flew into that country, I was like, okay. I mean, you see pictures of it and you see videos, but when you get there, you're like, how am I going to get over that mountain if there's a sheep on the other side? Like, it is daunting. It's an intimidating country.
It's daunting. So I'm just going to play a little video clip. This is something unique. If you've never been in the backcountry of Alaska, down by the rivers, it's like a rainforest. Okay. Down by the rivers, it's a rainforest. It's all vegetation. Okay. So much so that there's nowhere that an airplane can land. And then above the tree line, it's all rocks, right? So when you go on a bush plane, you don't have a lot of options of where you're gonna land. And a bush plane, you either have to land on the top of a mountain or you have to land in the middle of a river. You can't land, there's no place to land alongside of a river. The only place to land is on gravel bars in the middle of the river. Okay. So this is us coming in, right? There's no runway in Alaska, right? There's no runways. You go, okay, there's a gravel bar in the middle of the river that has not very much vegetation. We can put the airplane down there in the middle of the river on an island. And so this is us coming in, right? Now, remember, at this point, 16 hours ago, I got the phone call that we're going to change plans. We're going right now, right? Throw your stuff together. And so here, it's a little surreal as you go, man, 16 hours ago, I was in my bed and I got this phone call. We're going to change plans. And now we're landing this airplane, two-person Super Cub from 1958. We're just going to land right here in the middle of the river on a piece of gravel, right? And that's what it's like there. By the way, we clip all these willows coming in. And as we clip all these willows coming in, puts holes in the airplane, literally holes. At this point, Zach's going to come up in like 5 more days, right? He's going to be up. And the guy, Doug, who's flying the airplane, as we get out, he throws me a roll of duct tape, and says, hey, find any holes on the wing from those bushes and put a piece of duct tape on it. And I said, well, that sounds safe. And he goes, well, how much do you like your buddy? He's going to be the next one right in the airplane. Okay. So Zach, I duct taped him good. Okay.
He did good. I'm alive.
You're alive.
Tape all the holes.
But as I get out of the airplane, Zach, this is kind of the moment of truth, right? The guides are there, the guide and the packer, Sean and Connor, they're there, and they got the tents set up. And at this moment, as you look at this image, you see this giant mountain in front of me, right? At that moment, they inform me that tomorrow morning we're going to wake up and we're going to climb up through all those trees, up to those cliffs, and we're going to go over those cliffs. We got to go over top of this mountain to get to where we're going to camp for the next week. At that moment, you start to realize, hang on a minute, this is a life dream of mine since I was a 12-year-old boy to hunt these animals. But it starts to become really real in that moment that there is nothing that's going to be easy about this journey, right? So if you're watching and you're seeing it on the screen, yeah, we're going to go over that mountain tomorrow morning. If you're not, just imagine the biggest, nastiest mountain you've ever seen in your life. That's what we're looking at, okay? The next morning comes, you pack everything up in your backpack. Everything you're going to use to live for the next 10 days. It's a 10-day hunt. We're going to live out of that backpack for the next 10 days. All your food, your clothes, your rifle, your tent, your sleeping bag, everything that you're going to live for 10 days is in that backpack. It weighs about 70, 72 pounds, okay? As we start the journey, but you got to remember, where did we land, Zach? Where did I land again?
Down on a river.
Yeah, down on a river, in the middle of the river. So the very first thing you got to do to start the journey is you got to cross the river. And if you remember, the reason why I'm here 10 days early is because the guy before me landed in the same spot in the middle of the river, put his 70-pound pack on, attempted to cross the river, tore his ACL, MCL, almost got drowned, rolled down the mountain, rolled down the river. The rapids pushed him about 3/4 of a mile. The guides had to jump in and with a knife cut his backpack off in the middle of the river to keep him from drowning, pull him to safety, and then have an airplane come pick him up, right? So that's why I am here early. And now the first thing we got to do is we got to cross the river, okay? Now, you might not think that's much of a deal, but if you're watching the video, okay, this is real deal, right? Like 70-pound pack, raging river, and you got to cross 3 of these pieces just to get to the mountain, right? Like this isn't, at this moment, I've spent my whole life fishing in these rivers in my life, right? I live on a river. I swim in the river and I cross the river 50 times a year. This is a different experience. Glacier-fed water, 70-pound pack. If you fall down, it's going to sweep you down the river, face first in the water because your backpack's going to drive you down, okay? No room for air, okay? But that's how the journey starts to get to sheep country. Now, I know this picture for most of you that you're watching on YouTube. You're like, what is that? Whoop-de-doo. I'm standing in the forest. The forest it's a rainforest. It's so thick. It's the nastiest of nasty willows alder trees you've ever seen in your life. Zach, tell the listener, what is it like to climb up a mountain with a 70-pound pack in alders? What's that like?
It's absolutely miserable.
It's the worst.
Yeah, it's like every little limb catches your feet and you're tripping over everything. And I mean, it's already heavy. You're going uphill and then you got to push these branches and these willows like out of the way. It's miserable.
It's miserable. I'm going to go back to this picture. I'm just going to show you the mountain. If you're watching on you'll see up here where the cliffs start, and to the right of those, there's a little grass up on top of the open ridge where the trees end and the grass starts before the rocks. My guide in the morning that we went to leave, he said, if we do really good, if we can get to there between noon and 2 o'clock, we have a chance to make it to camp before 10 or 11 o'clock at night. Okay. So we start up hiking up through the willows and up through the alders. It's awful. And at 1:30, we reach that spot, okay, between his window. And I think, man, I have made it. Like, we started at 5 a.m. This is the greatest thing ever. We have made it to the spot that he said we got to get to by 1:30, between noon and 2 o'clock. And this is looking back down at the river where we started. And I just think this is great. Like, we've done it. Only to turn around, and now all those cliffs and rocks that you could see from the bottom of the mountain, now we got to climb up through them. And I thought, well, it's got to be easier than those alders. Like, we're done with that crap. This is just open now. I show this picture only to show on the right-hand side, this little shell chute going up through the cliffs, okay? Here's a picture of me sitting. I'm just like leaning against it. It's so steep. I'm just leaning against it, Zach. And I just had to lean against the mountain. It's that steep. Okay. And on the right, you can see 2 guys up in the cliff, right? Connor and Sean. This shell little chute to go 400, 500 yards max, 500 yards to get up there, took 4 hours. 4 hours to go 500 yards because you would go as hard as you could, 7 or 8 steps up, only to slide back 5. 7 or 8 steps up to slide back 5 for 4 hours. Am I exaggerating those kind of things, Zach?
No, it's almost like, I don't know how to describe it, but it's like the shell is so fine. It's almost like volcanic ash, right? It's like powder. So it's not like a solid foothold. I mean, you literally step, your feet sink into it like flour, yeah. And then you just slide down. It's not fun.
It's not fun. It's beyond grueling. But Zach, at this moment, like you have these experiences too. We'll talk about on the next episode. But as you're going through these experiences, right? What is it that actually gets you through those 4 hours?
Well, for me, it's the end goal, right? It's like the whole purpose for me for the sheep hunt really was yes, the sheep was awesome, but it was the experience, right? It was kind of like me against the mountain. So to me, it was a competition. It was like, can I really do this? And so, there's lots of times when you're just like, if I just tuck in a ball, gravity would take me all the way to the bottom and they'll fly me out, right? And I'll be done.
100%.
But yes, it was the end goal, right? It was like, can I do this? Can I beat the mountain? Am I tough enough?
So the reason why Zach and I love this kind of adventure, or why we love the sport of golf, or why we love motorcycles, or those things, right, is because it pits you and only you against yourself mentally and the elements, right? In this case, the mountain. And I think if you're going to be a successful entrepreneur, you've got to pick hobbies or things in life that can challenge you, push you to the brink of I mean, I hate to say this, but even to the brink of death, right? Even to the edge of what your body can actually tolerate. And it's because if you do those things for hobbies and fun in business, when you come up against the hardest, craziest challenges, you can overcome them. You can persevere. You can continue. And so for me, right at this moment, of course, is this 4 hours up this 500-yard section of shell. Did I want to quit? Absolutely. Did I think a few times, man, if this is just the first half of the first day, maybe this isn't for me. Maybe I can't get there. Maybe I can't get to sheep country. Now, just so everybody knows, they say that only 20% of all sheep hunters ever make it to sheep camp. 20%. 80% quit. 80% don't go through this part to get there, okay? 20% make it. Of those 20%, 5% actually stay the entire 10 days, okay? This is the reality. And Zach and I know these things going into it, right? We're quite aware of what it's like. So we go through this experience only to get to the top and have the most magnificent views. Looking down, you can see down there those little dots down at the bottom. That's where our tents are going to be. That's where they're at. And that's where we're going to kind of make home for the next several days, right? And once we got through that grueling, the first day was 13 miles, 18 hours. 18 hours to get there. And that's not no naps. That's 18 hours of what the world would call maybe pure hell. Okay. But there we go. That's going to be home. And over the next few days, we get the most magnificent views on the planet. Well, this one's not so magnificent. This is just to show, this was the second morning. I woke up and my big left toe was black. By day 3, they were all black. And by day 5, every toenail fell off of my feet. If you ever lost all your toenails, man, life sucks. Okay. You got a lot of nerve endings in those toes. But we had the most magnificent view. We spent the next 9 days hiking the tops of all these mountains, and we were lucky. And the sun came out, and we looked for sheep on every mountain in every direction for 25 miles. Okay. The most breathtaking, majestic views I've ever experienced, right? Just the prettiest place on earth for me. I was in heaven every day when I would wake up and spend the day hiking these mountains, glassing for sheep. Now, Zach, kind of tell people, where do the sheep live?
On the top.
On the top. On the top of these massive mountains.
Yeah.
And like in this picture, Zach, if we were to find sheep, the third mountains over, not the first mountain, not the second mountain, but the third mountain over. And we thought they were illegal. What would we do?
You got to just pack up all your stuff and you go. It's like the sheep aren't coming to you. You got to go find the sheep.
But Zach, that'd be like 30 miles.
Yeah. But that's sheep hunting.
You're telling me that if we found sheep on that third mountain, we'd pack everything up and we'd take 2 more days and we'd go 30 more miles over there.
Yeah, that's what you do.
That's what you do. Okay?
And you get as far as you can for the day. And when you can't go any further, you just make camp and get up and start the next day.
Do it again, right?
Yep.
Do it again. And so that's what we've been doing, right? And we get in places like this, these nasty big cliff bowls and nasty cliff mountains. You got to find out how I'm going to get me and my pack up through all this stuff, right? This is what sheep hunting is. It's hiking in this country, looking for these elusive white dots, right? That live up in these mountains. And it's the craziest thing. And then you're going to find them, right? On the left-hand side there, if you're watching, you get these little tiny specks out there a couple miles away. And then you get out the spotting scope and you start watching these sheep as they live up in the top of the mountain. And you got to determine, Zach, what makes a Dall sheep legal? Like, what makes it so you can actually hunt it?
Yes, there's I think it's 4 criteria that you have to at least one of those has to be met, right? So a sheep has to be full curl. In other words, oh, here, look. Can you see me?
I can see you.
So
it has to be 360 degrees.
Yeah. So can you see this sheep back here?
I can see that sheep. Maybe you might have to grab it.
Okay.
Turn it sideways.
So you have to. Oh, God, how heavy they are.
Oh yeah, 45 pounds. Just those horns.
So see these tips? How they're rounded off.
Yes.
So that's one legal requirement. If a sheep has these, they call it broomed off, right? Yep. So if they're not pointy and they're broomed off, then they're legal. Or if you look from the side, if the sheep's horns come all the way up and at least come back to the bases across, they call that full curl, right? So that would be the other requirement. Or it's by age, and a sheep in the Alaskan range has to be at least 7 years old or 8 years old.
8 years old.
And so you can see these dark rings.
Yes.
Right. So you have to get close enough that you can count those rings and see if there's 8 years old. And then there's one other measurement that nobody ever uses called the stick test, and that's if they're perfectly symmetrical and whatever. But so it has to meet one of those requirements.
Has to meet one of those requirements. So, I'm spending every day in Zach in Alaska, we're finding sheep. I'm finding sheep every day. Every single day I'm finding rams like these, on the left, some rams up in some rocks, some younger rams on the right. This ram right here in the middle, he's one of my favorite rams. He came in, got to 216 yards. I laid down, like we watched this ram. He became my best friend, but he was just not quite legal, right? Like he was only 7 years old and he was an inch shy of being legal. Okay. But we're having these incredible experiences with these sheep every day, right? We're finding these rams. We're putting stalks on these rams. I'm just living out my boyhood dream, right? Like all the hell of the 18-hour day to get there was all worth it for these 8-9 days. This was just, every day hiking about 5 miles a day in a different direction, finding sheep. Okay. To the point, right? We find some sheep like this, one sleeping, not quite legal. Find this other one that, man, he's legal. This one on the right's actually legal. Broomed off, like Zach showed on the right, on his left side there, his right side. Other side's not. He's a legal ram. He's just way cool. He's about 9 miles from our tents. And we're just, we're gonna shoot this ram. The problem is he's living on this cliff that it's 150 feet all around it in every direction. And we're trying to make a plan, like if we shoot this sheep and he dies right there, there's no way, we don't have rappelling gear. There's no way we're climbing this 150-foot cliff. So then we're trying to make the decision, well, what if we, this is going to sound gruesome for the non-hunters, but what if we shoot him off the cliff, right? We're going to shoot him off the cliff. Well, but if we shoot him off the cliff, at best, we can't get off the cliff we're on. So at best, it's going to take us 2 full days to go back, get our gear that's 9 miles away, and then go around another mountain, back to the river, and back up to this spot below us. 2 full days. And if we shoot him off, and it takes 2 full days to get there, what's going to happen to his hide and the meat, Zach?
It's going to be ruined.
It's going to be ruined. So that's not an ethical thing to do. So we make the decision, let's wait here and let's see if he comes off that cliff. So me and the guys, we sat on this sheep for 13 hours. Man, many of you couldn't go 1 hour without your cell phone, okay? But 13 hours. I watched this sheep for 13 hours, hoping and praying that he would get up and feed off of that cliff. He could get off it. He could climb down it, but we can't climb up it. And Zach, do sheep ever do what you want them to do?
No, they do the exact opposite of what
they do. The exact opposite. So we watch them for 13 hours and by this time we've burned up 2 days on this sheep. And we're on day number 8. And he, after 2 full days of going out, checking him, We come back, we sit 13 hours, we go back to 9 miles, go to bed, come out, hike the 9 miles back, and he's still there. And he hasn't come off. And so we've now burned 2 days and hunting the sheep. And on our hike back to camp, we've decided we can't shoot him. We got to be, by the way, in Alaska, like, it's not like you get to just pick and call home and say, hey, pilot, I want you to come get me. Like, we've made a deal with the pilot that we're going to be back down at that river on day 10. Okay. And on day 9, as we're hiking back, we aren't going to kill that sheep. And on day 9, I'm sitting here on the left and I'm looking across this basin. If you look way out in the distance, you'll see that big mountain that's got some cliffs on it. In the middle of it's got some cliffs. Sitting in those cliffs on the right is a zoomed in view of 2 sheep. Okay. So we see these sheep on day 9. We're supposed to be hiking back, getting our gear, and be down at the river on day 10. And when we see these 2 sheep from 4.5 miles away, that's how far that is, 4.5 miles. The guide and the outfitter, they're determined that one of the sheep on the left is a legal ram, that he's legal. So we send a text message through what's called an inReach. It's a satellite texting device. We send an inReach message to the pilot and we say, hey, we're going to need 2 extra days. It's day 9, pick us up on not day 11, pick us up on day 10, pick us up at the end of day 11. And we make a decision. We're going to hike the 4 miles over there. We're going to get our gear. We're going to go to the bottom of that mountain. We're going to hike up in those cliffs and we're going to shoot this ram. Okay. Now at that moment, just so you know, Zach, the guide, he said, we shot a sheep over there 2 years ago in those cliffs. The problem was after we shot the sheep, Jack was the hunter. Jack, we were going over to pick up the sheep. He slipped in those cliffs. He fell off a 60-foot cliff. He broke his shoulder. He hit his head really bad. And we had to have a life flight helicopter come and long line him off the mountain. Nowhere to land the helicopter. Long line him off the mountain. And to save his life. Okay. So the guide says, I really don't want to go back in those cliffs, but so let's hike over there and let's wait for the sheep to come out of those cliffs. We're not going to hike into those cliffs. Okay, done. Pilot agrees, sends us back a message, he's going to pick us up a day later. Now, so we're going to start our journey from where I'm at here all the way around to those mountains to get over there. Now, Zach, real quick, how much food do you pack?
As little as you possibly can,
Okay.
because it's all weight.
It's all weight.
But you ration it out to the day. Like, you know how many breakfasts you got, you know how many lunches you're going to have, and you know how many dinners you're going to have for as many days as you're there. And you count the calories and you count the ounces. And so you've got just enough food to get in and get out on the amount of days you're supposed to be there.
So when we make the decision that we're going to go over there and we're going to take an extra day and a half to 2 days to do that, that means that we're not going to have food. Okay. That's a consecrated effort. Me, the guide, and the packer, we make a deal that we're going to ration our food on day 9 so that we have some food on day 10. On day 11, we'll have no food. We're going to shoot the sheep and we're going to pack it down off the mountain to the river. We make that decision. Okay. And we do that. We wake up in the morning. On day 11, now we've had no food. We share a granola bar and a piece of jerky for 3 dudes. Okay. And we hike up and now we're sitting above those cliffs that you saw before. We're sitting above them. And the guide says, we're not going to go in those cliffs. No matter what, we're not going in there because Jack had fallen off the cliff there. It's too dangerous. And it's a wet, rainy morning. Okay. And so we wait and we wait and we wait sitting in these cliffs. Okay. And the sheep just don't come out of them. We've watched them now for 2 days come out of those cliffs from miles away. Every afternoon they come out, but they're not coming out. And so we wait and we wait. And then the rain comes and here we are just hunkered down above them in the cliffs until we make the decision that, hey, we don't have any food. So I know it's dangerous. I know it's not probably the smartest. I know Jack almost died 2 years before, but we're going to go in. Like, we're going to go climb in those cliffs. We're going to try and find those rams. And so we make the decision and we climb in the cliffs. So here's a picture now. We've climbed into the cliffs and it was sketchy as all get out. Okay. It was beyond dangerous. Okay. We get in there and there they are. I mean, the most magnificent, everything that I waited for since I was 12, every moment, all the anticipation. From 4 miles away, the guide had said these are legal rams. And we lay down, put my rifle on them, and here's the pictures, right? Like, here they are, right? They're in my crosshairs. They are laying down at 109 yards away. And I'm beyond excited. Everything I waited for. Ready to just pull the trigger. And Zach, I'm convinced that in Montana, my guides were from Montana. I'm convinced in Montana that in school, in elementary school, there's a problem. I think you know the problem. Big problem.
It's a big problem.
How many fingers and toes do we have? We have how many fingers?
Well, I got 10 fingers.
I got 10 fingers.
4 fingers, 1 thumb on each hand.
Yeah, so this is pretty easy to me to count to 10, right? Definitely to count to 8. But I've decided that Alaskans, bush people in Alaska, and people from Montana don't know how to count past 7. Because I sat here for an hour while my guide and packer tried to count to 8. Tried to count rings on a sheep to 8. And it would go like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And they would never get to 8. And I would say 8.
Just say
8. Because my finger's on the trigger. Remember, like I'm laying here, my finger's on the trigger. If he just says the word 8, we're going to shoot a sheep. Okay? We're going to shoot a sheep. And he never gets to 8. And this ram is not legal. He's not 8. He's not full curl. He's not broomed off. But he is the most majestic, beautiful ram. And because he like flares out, like he's a Boone and Crockett ram, he's going to make the record book because he's really wide and curls. But by state standards, he's not legal. Okay. In that moment, Zach, like, what does it feel like when you've just put in like tons and tons and tons of work, crazy effort, and it's right there in front of you, but your goal and dreams taken away from you? What does that feel like?
It's like a gut punch. Like it really is. Like you've done all this work. And then you get to right there, the finish line. And it's like somebody says, oh, you're disqualified. You can't cross it. Right? It's like, it just sucks all the wind out of you.
It's you haven't eaten. You've made a decision to not eat for 2 days because you're going to eat this sheep. You've done all this work. Everything's worked out. And everything's taken away from you. If I had my journal here, it's really raw. I would read it for you. In that moment, I'm a grown man. At this point in life, I'm like 42 years old probably. I'm a grown man. I wept on the mountain. Got no idea why I wept. But I wept on the mountain. Because everything I had worked so hard for, that it set in that it wasn't going to come to fruition. It wasn't going to happen. During that week, I hiked 113 miles and 47,000 feet of vertical elevation gain with a 70-pound backpack, with a leg that doesn't even work. And in that moment, I learned it wasn't going to come to fruition. It wasn't going to happen. And it was almost as if, Zach, like unfortunately, it was almost as if I wrote in my journal that the heavens wept with me, because when we decided that we couldn't shoot this sheep, the most torrential rainstorm that I have ever experienced in the wild came upon us. And it rained so hard that these cliffs just turned into raging waterfalls. And we had to just hunker down and lay down on a cliff for an hour and a half as we got pummeled by rain, because if we tried to take a step, we would all perish and die. We would fall off the cliffs. So we just had to sit there in all this despair and take it. And then take a 4-mile hike back to where our tents were of just bitterness and anger and frustration. Because in that moment, you can't be happy. It just doesn't work. And know that when we get back to camp, that we have no food. Not one singular thing to eat. And that the next day we're going to have to get up and we're going to have to make a grueling 13-mile hike back to the river to get picked up. It was awful. It was it was mentally, physically, one of the hardest days of my life. And so the next morning we wake up, I dug through my bag and I found these old wrappers, hoping to find like a scrap, something to eat, only to find wrappers. And we decide, hey, we're gonna book it down the mountain to the river, because 8 days, or at this point now, 11 days ago, we left two bagels, a little bit of salami in a bag on the river. And on the right, I just took this image. This is a picture. Remember that Shell Mountain that took me 4 hours to climb? It took 3 minutes. It took 3 minutes to go down. 3 minutes to go down.
It's like skiing.
It's like skiing.
It just slides with you.
So at least it was only 3 minutes to go back down that. And then we hiked off that mountain, back through all the alders, back down to the river, where we got down there and we ate a moldy bagel, and we had some salami. Now here's the problem, Zach. When I got down to the river, you can see it's a beautiful day where I'm at there on the river, right? It's a beautiful day. But does that mean that the airplane can come get you in Alaska?
No. Just because it's nice where you're at doesn't mean it's nice where between you.
It was a beautiful sunny day on day 11. Absolutely gorgeous. Back where the pilot was at Anchorage, it was a torrential downpour. So we get an inReach message that he's not going to be able to come get us for 2 more days. 2 more days. We haven't had food since day 9. It's day 11. And he just tells us that he might be able to get us on the end of day 12 or day 13. 2 more days. Luckily, I had a fishing hook, 1 sinker, and 30 feet of fishing line. So we put that all together, put it on a water bottle, and I fished in the river, in the Tatina River. Luckily, I caught a grayling that fed 3 men on a 12-inch grayling. And that was the first time we had real food in 3 days. And we knew that was the only food we were going to have until the airplane could come to get us. So, Zach, let me ask you this. Why would we do that? Like, why would you do that? As they watch the airplane come into land here to pick us back up, why would we do that, right?
It doesn't make sense to anybody else, right? But I mean, you do it because it's what you want. Like, here's what's crazy. Here's what's crazy. If you think about almost anything in life, business, relationship, almost anything, there are little windows of like joy and happiness and like serenity and easiness. But most of the journey between where you're at and that piece, there's some suck in there. And like you go through all of this because you know that there are these little windows of awesomeness that you get to be a part of. And you don't see those if you don't go through all the other crap that it takes to get there.
So thanks, Zach, because at this moment, right, like mostly I felt like a little bit of a failure, right? Like I hadn't met my full goal, it hadn't become reality. It was the craziest, hardest week and a half. And when I landed back in Anchorage, I told the outfitter, I said, no matter what, I said, we're coming back next year, because we left 4 sheep on the mountain that were within 1 year of being legal. And he said, well, I got a waiting list 2 years long. I said, it doesn't matter. We're coming back. I said, make it a reality. We're coming back. We're gonna hunt those 4 sheep. And he said, well, nobody's ever come back the next year. Like, one, after they go through the suck, they just don't come back the next year to do that. And I said, well, we're coming back. And he said, well, I'll put you down, but I can't guarantee a spot. So what I'm going to do is all I can guarantee you is a plane ride and a guide. Like, I don't know who I'd say. I might not be able to send a real guide. I might be able to send an Alaskan resident with you, and you guys got to figure it out. And I said, well, we know where the sheep live. We just need an airplane ride back next year. So 1 year later, here Zach and I sit 1 year later in Anchorage, big nasty storm. Here we are killing 2 days waiting for the weather to lift. But the difference was that year, Zach, the weather was so bad, the snow was so bad in Alaska that we couldn't land in the river, right? We couldn't land at the river. So this is us coming in. Where was the closest place that he could land us to where those sheep were the second year?
You're probably at least by the crow flies, you're probably 7 miles. By hiking, you're probably close to 12 to 15.
So the closest he could get is 12 to 15 miles. And this time he couldn't land us in the river because there was no gravel bars. There was no gravel. The river was raging. So where did he landed us this time? On top of a mountain 12 miles away from where we left all those sheep alive. And he couldn't send us with the same guides. They couldn't come. They had other hunters. So he sent us with this Kiwi fellow from New Zealand and a packer. One of the guys that was with me, who was a packer, like the low man on the totem pole, the guy that's like way down there, he has the grunt job. He wanted to come back with us, and he did. His name was Sean. He was with me there before, and he wanted to come back. He wanted to be part of what we deemed the Redemption Ram Tour, right? Like we're gonna go find one of those 4 rams, and we're gonna get our redemption, right? So we land on top of the mountain. Here's a picture of Zach coming in, right? Like to give you some perspective. I'm on top of the mountain now. I've set up the tents. They're bringing Zach up the mountain. It's a rainy, nasty day. But look how tiny the airplane is compared to these mountains, right? Like just got to get perspective. How itty-bitty the airplane actually is compared to the mountains. Now, they couldn't land. The first time they tried to come in and land, he couldn't land, right? It was too dangerous, right? Like, so got to come in again. Got to try it again, right? And there's the windsock, right? The wind stopped. Airplanes like what, Zach?
They gotta have a little headwind.
Gotta have a little headwind. And so we're making a windsock so that the pilot can see. And here's my buddy sitting in the airplane. The pilot's only ever landed up there like 10 times before in his life. And he's like, it's really dangerous. It's super sketchy. You got to land up the mountain. It's all rough and nasty. And I mean, just crazy. And we've spotted while I'm waiting for Zach in the direction we have to go on a mountain that both Zach and I had been to before. Like I had been to that mountain the year before. There's a sheep on it, a sheep that I've seen before. And he's living on that mountain. He was on it the year before. And it's only about 6 miles in the direction we got to go. So it's kind of fun. The first night, as I'm waiting for Zach to come up there, we spot this sheep in the direction we got to go 6 miles away. And so we get up in the morning and we have the most majestic, beautiful view as we leave our camp. And we're going to hike down this valley and we're going to hike up that mountain and we're going to check out those sheep. And it's just like glacier-fed streams, the most beautiful, lush place. Nasty rainstorm that morning, but just beautiful, right? And this time it's way cooler because the last time it was just me and the guides, but this time Zach has decided, I don't have no idea why, to come back and to be with me as we do it again.
Moron.
When you know the suck and you know how bad it's going to be, it's really something else to go do it again, right? You know every moment of what you're getting into. And so these are just our hike down the mountain, right? Like as we hike off it, this is Zach laying against the hill. Like it's so steep, you just lean against it. Like there's no effort to it. You just lean against it. In the process, we spot some sheep over on another mountain about 5 miles away. And we're looking at those. And we've determined that one of those is a legal ram. But in order to go after those, it's going to be a 2-day journey. We'd have to go back, get our tents, get our gear, relocate. It'd take 2 days to get over to those sheep. But we found some legal rams. We're like, hey, if we have to, we can go over to those. In the meantime, we get down 6 miles down the mountain and we find the sheep that we found from camp the night before. And lo and behold, it's actually a sheep that I looked at the year before. It's a sheep that I looked at 112 yards the year before. We knew he was legal. We knew he was 7 then. We know he's 8 now. And we get to set up on him. And the first time we get set up on him, Zach, we hike up the mountain and we set up on him. And there we are at 143 yards and we watch him for like an hour. But he doesn't present a shot to us. And the problem is the side facing us is the side of him that's not legal. And for an hour and a half, this guide who I thought only Montanans couldn't count to 8, but apparently New Zealand doesn't teach people to count to 8 either.
No.
He gets to 7 and he keeps going 7 and never says the word 8. He's not 8. And so we're trying to count rings. We're trying to tell. And we've hiked from.
And by the way, Josh, it's worthy to note, like if you you go through all this, right? You go through all this, and then if you shoot a ram that is not legal, when you're done hunting, you have to go back to Anchorage, to the Fish and Game office, and they have to measure it. They make sure it's legal, and then they actually put a plug in the horns, right? So if anyone's ever poached one, like they know your ram, and if it's not legal, they fine you and they take it from you. Yep. So it's like you get this trophy, cross the line, and then someone walks up and goes, sorry, I'm taking that back. So you got to make sure they're legal.
Yeah, you got to make sure. And the guide, the outfitter, can no longer guide an outfit in Alaska.
I lose his license.
Lose their license. So their livelihood's over. So, I mean, you have to make sure that you know that it's legal. And so we get up there. We can't tell exactly for sure. He gets up and he walks over the hill. So, and to give you an idea, we've climbed from that morning from 5,000 feet down to 800 feet elevation, up to this point, 4,400 feet elevation, only to find out that we're not exactly sure if he's legal, and he walks over the hill. And in order to climb around the cliffs, we got to go back down to 1,000 feet elevation to climb around a cliff. Like, I don't know about the listeners, but when you have to do vertical climbs of 4,000 feet up and then down, it's not very fun. Okay, it's not very fun. Only to have him walk around the mountain. We actually give up on him. Where he went in the cliffs, we thought we can't get there. And we had seen those other rams, and we're making the decision to go get a better look at them and make the game plan of, where can we move camp and how can we get camp to where we want to go. When we turn back around and this ram comes around the mountain, and when he comes around the mountain, he's like 640 yards above us on the mountain. And at that point, we look at him and we can see the other side. And yes, he's legal, and we know that he's legal now. But now the problem is we know he's legal, but we got to climb back up to 4,000 feet. Like, we got to reclimb the mountain. We climb the mountain, and we get to this spot where we're 600 yards away from him, only to get there. And where we're at, there's a little breeze. But up there where he's at, we can see his fur just blowing in the wind, right? Like, we can see it blowing. And Zach, have you and I done a lot of long-range shooting together?
Yeah. Yeah, we've done a lot.
A lot. Like, at least 100 animals in our family have been shot at long range, with Zach and I spotting for each other or for our kids or each other's kids or and so there's nobody I trust more, right? The guide says we're not close enough to shoot him, that it's too windy. And there's only one shot to shoot him here. Like, he's on these cliffs. If he leaves these cliffs, we can never hunt it. Like, we can't climb in those cliffs. They're too vertical. And so I tell the guide that, I said, we can make this shot all day. And he says, well, you don't know what the wind is up there. And I said, I don't know what the wind is up there. I know it's at least 20 miles an hour. I don't know what it is. But if I can shoot my rifle and my friend Zach can watch it, we can kill this ram. And he's never seen this done before, right? Like, he's like, no, it can't be done. Like, he's like, it cannot be done. Like, you can't do that. It's 20 mile an hour crosswind. And I just said, again, if I can hold on the sheet right here and I can shoot, and Zach can tell me where the bullet hits, we can shoot this sheep on the second shot. So, Zach, what did we do?
Send it, baby.
Send it. So here's a little video clip, right, of that exchange.
Hi, and right.
Now it's whispering now, like I'm whispering, they're whispering. So at this point, right, at that point, Zach whispers to me that there's 2 feet of wind. Now, when you have a buddy or a mentor or a business partner, you have somebody in life that you've done a lot of stuff with, and they tell you 2 feet of wind, you can absolutely trust it. And we've done this enough in life that if he said 2 feet of wind and he said it's a little high, right? When you shoot uphill so high, it's a little difficult, right? 628 yards. So Zach says there's 2 feet of wind and it's a little bit high. And I saw the impact on the rock of the bullet just about 3 inches high over his back. And so the second time, it's really simple, right? Hold 2 feet of wind, lower the aiming point, and take the shot, right? So in that moment, right, having a trusted friend who had been there with you and done it, like, unbelievable. And so after that experience, here we are, right? Like, after 2 years, all this hard work and all this effort, here's the satisfaction and the joy, right? Like, I can't tell you, like, these pictures, right? Like, it was incredible to be able to have all that effort and to be able to share it with a friend and to be able to be there on the mountain and conquer all of that hard work. So the year one was all those extra days, 13 days, 112 miles, 47,000 feet of vertical climb, all this effort to then have year two be 6 miles away. Day one, these pictures are taken at 2 p.m. in the afternoon. Like, for all the hard work of year one, for all the simplicity of year two. Speak to that for a minute, Zach. Like, what it was, to those principles of why that sometimes is that way.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I've had so many experiences, Josh, in life where you put all this effort in and you're like, this is never going to happen. This is never going to happen. This is never going to happen. And you want to quit so many times along the way. And then it's like, it's the last phone call you make, or it's the last little piece of effort that you put in, and all of a sudden it happens, right? It's almost like there's this thing in nature that just has to test you to see if you're worthy of the goal. And I mean, I don't know why it works this way, but to go put all that effort in the year before, right? And then it was like icing on the cake. It was magic. And by the way, like, you asked the question, why in the world would you ever go back knowing how difficult it was? Because I'll share my experience with you probably in the next episode of what my hunt was like. And I mean, here's the thing. I knew what it was like. It was hard. And I knew what Josh's experience was like. And for him not to get a sheep, because we'd been planning this together, it definitely hurt him worse, right? But it hurt me too.
Yeah,
I was like, man, they weren't able to find a legal ram and close the deal. And so for me, it was like, there's no way I'm letting my friend go the next year and do all that by himself without being there, right? I'm going because I want him to kill a sheep as bad as I wanted to kill a sheep. And I knew what it was going to be like. And I wanted to go through that, like, with you, right? And be there for you. And I'm like, another set of eyes, and we're going to get this done because we've worked so stinking hard for it. And then to have the hunt we had was like, it was awesome.
It is awesome. And everywhere in life, like, I learned this principle 22 years ago, that if you really want to go somewhere, whether it's in business or in personal life, you really should team up with someone who has like-minded goals. And then you should team up with people the best you can who have been there before, who've done it, who know what it's going to be like, and who can give you encouragement, right? For me, that was, my uncle had been there and done it and had told me how crazy it was and how amazing. And here we are, right? Zach and I doing it together. And it's not about killing the sheep. It's about the journey and what it takes to beat the mountain or to conquer it or to be part of it or to succeed when 99% of the world will quit, right? And again, the reason we're sharing these experiences are because in life, if we can't challenge ourselves on a personal level, I promise we can't get through the hardest parts of business. Business is hard. And there are so many external forces against you in business that it's always easier to quit than it is to succeed. Always. That's why in the Navy SEALs, in their BUDS training, that's why they got the bell. And that's why 90% of the people ring the bell and quit. It's easier to quit than succeed, right? But if you can challenge yourself on a personal level, whether it's with some personal goals of hiking or maybe motorcycles or maybe golf or maybe trying to really do well in pickleball, whatever it is, right? Like pick something and try and master it and become great at it or work at it that pushes you to a new level. And so for me, right, this was a culmination of a 35-year dream, a goal with that I thought when I got in a head-on car crash, and I thought when I had to have 9 knee surgeries and ankle surgeries, I thought would never come to fruition, right? Like I thought it could never happen. Instead, I just had to say, you know what? Like it's going to hurt, it's going to suck. But isn't pain pretty much just temporary? Like, isn't it? And can't you just maybe block it out and do the very best you can do and see what can happen, right? And so for me, right, these images, if you're seeing the images, this is picking the sheep up on top of the mountain. The nasty storm came in. We'll get to it, I'm sure, sometime, but this nasty storm rolls in. The pilot's able to come and get me, and then he's not able to come get Zach for another 9 days, I think.
9 days.
9 days later, Zach got off the mountain. We'll tell that adventure later. But I leave my buddy. I get flown off the mountain in a torrential downpour with the sheep because the pilot texted on the inReach and said, hey, I can come get someone in the sheep right now, but I don't know when I can come back. There's a nasty storm coming in. Zach was stuck on the mountain for 9 more days. That's
you have to fly with your sheep. Right?
Yeah, I have to fly with the sheep. Yeah,
you can't Josh has got to go out with.
I have to go with the sheep
because it's got to go. Yeah, it's like
fishing game.
Yep.
Yeah. So we fly the sheep off the mountain. This is a little video clip, flying off the mountain. It's one of those things where I'll just tell you, right? The plane, my sheep goes down. It has to go down. It's too much weight for me and the sheep to get off the mountain. So he's going to fly it down to the river, and then he's going to come back, get me, and then me and the sheep can get in, and we can fly down, fly back to Anchorage together. The problem was when the pilot had never taken off this direction before because of storms, had never taken off. It's a big cliff, 1,000-foot cliff on the other side of that mountain. He says to me, I think we're going to be able to make it. But Josh, I need you to unbuckle your seatbelt. Think about this for a minute. I need to you sit in tandem. He sits in front. I sit right behind him in tandem in line. He says, I need you to unbuckle your seatbelt. I need you to lean over top of me and grab the bars in front of my face. And we're going to fall off of this cliff. The airplane will not get lift. We will not take off. We're going to drop off the cliff. And I believe, he says this, I believe we'll be able to get lift as we drop down the canyon. Hey, I got full faith in this guy, right? I don't got a choice, right? When he says words like, I believe we're going to get lift. And I say to him, have you ever done this before? He's like, nope, not off this cliff, but other ones like it. And we drop off the cliff. Now I'm here today, right? I'm here today. We made it. That night we landed on 2 gravel bars. We couldn't get home all the way to Anchorage. The storm was so bad we had to land twice in the middle of a river and just sit there in a rainstorm because it was too dangerous to fly. I mean, a wild, wild, wild adventure, right? And why do I, at the end of the day, why do we share this, right? Like, what's the point? We're gonna have a part 2 to this, where Zach's gonna share his experience, and then part 3, we're gonna dive into why it's so important to have life goals that challenge you. Pick things in this world that challenge you. It could be a marathon. It could be a half a marathon. It could be a 5K. By the way, remember, I ain't doing any of those. I just got home from a 100-mile endurance motorcycle race, right? You got to pick things in this world that can challenge you. And we're going to dive into part 3 here into why that's so important. But as we wrap this up, Zach, I can just say, for me, right, that experience of hunting Dall sheep in Alaska, that 2-year journey of being on the mountain with them, is still one of the most rewarding personal experiences of my life because of the lessons that I learned about myself. What are some things, Zach, some takeaways that we could share that you learned about yourself going through that experience?
Well, I think, for me personally, and I'll share my experience again, like say in the second episode, but there was a specific hunt that I wanted when I went. And the reason I wanted the hunt was, again, because it wasn't so much, I wanted the sheep. Don't get me wrong. I wanted the sheep. but I wanted the experience of it. And I mean, so many of the things that we go through in life, they're hard, right? And then, like you say, most people quit, but you never really get to find out who you are. If you don't go through those challenges, you never get to find out what you're really capable of. And that, I think, is part of the purpose of setting some of these goals and then fighting to the end to get them, is because you find out that you're really capable of more than what you think you are. I learned on these hunts that it was 10% physical, 90% mental. Like you felt like you couldn't take one more step. And my legs said 1,000 times, you're not taking another step. I'm a midget. Like, I got short legs. So to pack my 70-pound pack, around, I don't take very big strides. And so I take a lot of steps. And there was a lot of times my legs and my lungs were just like, you're done. Like, there's no more. But I had to dig deep mentally and say, no, mind over matter. Just take one more step. And you go, well, what difference is one more step going to make? When you look at this mountain and you have another 4,000 feet to go and you're already done, and you're like in your head, you're going, I'm in trouble. Like, I'm not getting up this mountain. And you go, just one more step. And it's like, what difference is that going to make? But what's crazy is you just find this place in your mind and you take that one more step, and then you take one more step, and pretty quick you're on the top. And you're looking around going, I can't even believe that was physically possible, because 10,000 steps ago at 2,000 feet, when I got to go another 2,000 feet halfway up the mountain, I was done, right? So this ability to do these kind of hard things and put yourself in these positions on purpose. It's like, people ask me all the time after I share my experience with the first time, they're like, you're a moron. Why in the world would you go a second time when it wasn't even your sheep? You didn't get to shoot one. And it was because the first time I had this experience, right? And I'm like, I know I can do it now. And the second time, mentally, I was more prepared. And I'll share, you know what, this is interesting. So this is like, this is to hold that, right? And to touch it and feel like I did that is pretty dang cool after the experience that you have. But you talked about relationships in business. I don't know if I've shared this with you, Josh, but I look at your sheep in your office, and your sheep means more to me than my sheep does.
Interesting.
And the reason your sheep means more to me than my sheep does is because we shared that together, right? And it was the relationships. And I knew how hard it was the first year for you to walk off that mountain without a sheep. And I knew how hard the experience was that I had the year before. And having come home with the sheep, it was almost like survivor's guilt. Like, I had got what I went after, right? But my friend wasn't able to do it. And so it's the people that you do life with, I think, that matters even more than the money or the business. I can count so many times where I have had an experience and I go, man, I wish the people that I really loved were here to share this with me. Right? And whether it's victories in business, where it's like, that would have been a lot funner to do with Josh, or, with somebody that you love and that you have a relationship with, rather than, now you get to be really good friends with your guide because you're battle buddies, right? You go through it together, and they want your sheep for you as much as you want your sheep for you. But, I look, the picture that you pulled up with, the two of us in that sheep, it's like, that experience means more to me than when I killed my sheep, because it's who you do life with, right? And there's so few people that you can surround yourself with that will actually go through the crap with you, or that when they see you battling in business, they'll cheer for you rather than go, oh, I knew he couldn't do it, right? Or because they're secretly inside jealous because they're not going after their goals. They're like, oh, I hope he doesn't get that, because then subconsciously it'll make me feel better that I didn't go after my goals, right? So those relationships, I think, are so important.
I think we'll close on that in this, Zach, that if you're listening today, it is of paramount importance that you find some life goals that you want to achieve, that you find an accountability partner, a new friend, a buddy, an old friend, a new friend, but somebody who's like-minded that wants to do it too. For many of you, that might be somebody who's like, hey, I want to run a marathon. And you team up with somebody else that wants to, and you train and you do it, and hold each other accountable, you push through it, and you make it a reality, right? Maybe it's a big bicycle race, maybe anything, but it's of paramount importance that you team up with someone else who thinks like you do, that wants to do those things, and you do it together. There's valuable lessons in it, right? And for me, some of my greatest takeaways are similar to yours, Zach, that we can do hard things. And we got to do them by choice. Life puts enough hard things in our path that we have to do. But wouldn't it be good to build the skills and the tools on our own so that the next time life gives us a challenge that we have to go through, that we can draw on our experiences of when we chose to go through them? And so I would just encourage everyone, pick something hard, pick something difficult, pick something that you've always wanted to do, and make it a reality. Put in the effort, put in the time, put in the dedication, because coming out of it, you'll be a different person. You'll have better friendships and relationships with those involved with you, and you'll know that you can accomplish it when it really matters in the future. And so, Zach, we're going to let the listeners go for this episode of the Sound Money, Sound Principles of Believers podcast. Tune in next time as you hear the crazy experiences that Zach had on his journey of hunting Dall sheep in Alaska. And don't miss the third and final part where we break down what it means to set goals, life goals, and lessons learned through that process. So everybody have a great week. Can't wait to see you next time on the Sound Money podcast.
See you, everyone.
See ya.